Atlantis has blasted off on the last ever mission of the 30-year-old American Space Shuttle program. Carrying 4 US astronauts and a load of cargo to restock the orbiting research lab, the shuttle rocketed off from the launch pad at the Kennedy Space Center in the early hours of this morning. Well, watching that was our North America correspondent Graig McMurtrie, and he joins us live from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Graig, what a moment, but it very nearly didn't happen.
That's true, it didn't nearly happen. It was the weather first. NASA forecasters were giving it only a 30% chance of having favourable conditions, but the cloud threatened for a while, but then it lifted, it cleared, we saw patches of blue, and people started to hope that it might indeed happen. I was with a group of people and there was an audible gasp, an intake of breath at 30 seconds in the countdown. They thought that everything was going smoothly, then all of a sudden the countdown was stopped momentarily. NASA engineers needed to check that an arm of a particular piece of equipment on the launch pad had properly retracted and was away from the shuttle side. And then 30 seconds later, after a delay of a few minutes, the shuttle blasted off, and it was a spectacular sight. It rode this huge fiery column up into the sky. We didn't see it for a lot of time because of those clouds. It vanished into the clouds only after a few seconds, but there was a roar of applause and emotion, a wave really that swept around the countdown clock here, and indeed in many vantage points all around Cape Canaveral.
Now, I hear physically you actually really notice a blast. Tell us about the noise and what physically it was like to watch that launch this morning.
Well, the first thing that strikes you is you see it before you hear it. I mean, you see the engines ignite. You're listening to the NASA commentary. There is the explosive power as this huge vehicle lifts off the launch pad, and then you see that spectacular flame that trails out from behind it, and then the sound rolls towards you, really like a wave. We're several kilometres away from the launch pad here. Obviously, you can't be that close to it, but the sound really does roll towards you like a wave, and then several moments later it passes through you, and you can hear it a long way away. People in homes all around this area or along the Space Coast, in communities like Titusville, in stores and shops around Merritt Island, which is adjacent to the launch complex here, they say their buildings shake when the space shuttle takes off. It really is this huge firecracker.
Now, as you mentioned, there are so many people who've come to watch this launch. What have they been saying about this final launch? I suppose there's a fair bit of pride there, but probably a bit of sadness as well.
There is a bit of sadness, as a lot of people have expressed in the days leading up to this, but I have to say the overall impression today was one of celebration, one of joy, and of course one of relief. People went to extraordinary lengths to be here today. We spoke to a couple who came from Oregon. They'd spent 2 days to get here, flying on the road. They didn't sleep last night. They estimate they've had maybe 2 hours sleep in 2 days. They had tears streaming down their faces. That was the sensation. It was relief, it was joy, but yes, also tinged with sadness, because they know with Atlantis taking off now, and we're about 6 odd hours into the mission, that the clock's ticking on the shuttle program. It'll be in space for 12 days, docked with the International Space Station for about a week, moving all these supplies off the vehicle into the International Space Station, and then bringing things that aren't needed from the International Space Station back here to the NASA landing complex. But when that happens, when Atlantis rolls down that runway, when its wheels stop, that's it for the space shuttle. After 30 years, that is the end of an era.
So what is next for the program? Obviously, this is the end of an era, as you said. In what form will things continue for American astronauts?
Well, for astronauts, they will be basically hitching a ride on the Russian Soyuz rocket to the International Space Station. Some, like Australia's Andy Thomas, are still working with NASA. He's based in Houston. He's working on a team trying to develop the next rocket, the next vehicles that NASA may use to try and get to an asteroid, to the moon, to Mars. But funding for that remains very uncertain, and certainly some astronauts are retiring and leaving the program. But NASA was very keen today to emphasise that it is not getting out of the space space business by any means. The next big ticket item, I suppose, is a rover that they're sending to Mars called Curiosity. It lifts off later this year. It's supposed to be on the surface of Mars next year, and NASA is hoping that that will get a lot of public attention, because that's the big concern now. With the demise of the shuttle program, once Atlantis returns, that maybe public interest may tail off, and there's a lot of concern about that.
What an amazing moment you've just witnessed. Graig McMurtrie in Washington, in Florida, I should say. Thank you so much for that.
No problem.